Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to be looking at the weekly meta breakdown for the best performing standard best of one decks, the highest win rate decks that we see on the MTG Arena ladder as tracked from Untapped GG, what you see on the screen. It's a companion tool that aggregates users' win rates, gives a whole bunch of cool stats. If you want to use Untapped, link is in the video description. I'll paste and timestamp all these deck lists as well for you. If you can probably hear from my voice, I'm on the tail end of recovering from COVID, so I apologize if I sound a little winded or stuff like that. I'm just trying to get back to feeling normal. So we will look at starting off with the popularity of the day, just kind of the distribution of decks, what we see from Diamond and Mythic rank, and then we'll look at the deck lists themselves. I've kind of interweaved a bunch of community decks as well. There's a lot of folks that have crossed that Mythic rank threshold, so we're going to look to see what they're playing against and see if anyone kind of found an answer for the mono red Leyline menace, which Reddit is very happy with, let me tell you. If you enjoy this type of content, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. We are closing in on 15,000 subs. It's free all those ways and it helps support the channel. So greatly appreciated if you can. So jumping into it, we have popularity of the day. We're going to look Diamond and Mythic rank. We have 22,000 games of Magic played for today, I guess the last week or so. And then 16% is Boros Auras. So it surpassed Rakdos Aggro, which is the Leyline deck in terms of popularity. This is like a mouse aggro kind of Boros shell. Gives you similar explosive, turn 3, turn 4 kills, but it has lifelink to help you race in those formats. The Rakdos Aggro deck, 14%. We're seeing the Oculus, Azorius kind of helping hand deck come in at 6.6. Discard and mono black midrange at about 6.5 each. Main kind of difference, one's like a Bandit's Talent deck, whereas the other one is more of a slasher one-shot kill kind of deck. Azorius Control, 2.8%. The Enchantments deck, about 2.4%. And then Jund Aggro, which is kind of a Leyline version. We'll take a look. It's basically Gruul Leyline with the Fling package still included in it. So we'll look at an example of that. So yeah, Mono Red deck has been coming down in terms of play popularity. We're seeing it surpassed by the Auras deck, but it is still the kind of menace of the format. And that's kind of reflected in the win rate, 64%, 180 games here. So this one here, how it's kind of built, you have Leyline of Resonance. So if you are a good gamer, you'll have at least one of these, maybe 2, maybe 3 in your opening hand. They come into play on turn 0, and they double up any of your instants that target a creature you control. Now, notably, Callous Sellsword has 2 targets, so this doesn't get doubled. So be mindful of that when you're doing your math. This version here is trimmed down the number of creatures, so 2 Emberheart Challengers, you still have your Slick Shots. The turn 2 kills originate with either Scamp or where you Heartfire Hero, and then you're able to double up with like Turn Inside Out or Monstrous Rage. In this case, you'd also fling with the Heartfire Hero, or with Scamp, it's just any +2, +6, 2, +3 power effects. Will give enough because it self-sacrifices itself for the rest of the damage. Dreadmire's Ire's pump effect with Trample, Belliness Rage for haste, Might of the Meek gives Trample and draws you a card. This is nice with the Leyline because it refills your hand. Turn Inside Out is a creature afterwards if they remove it. So in the US Regional Championship yesterday, which was Pioneer, a Rakdos aggro deck, non-Leyline though, did finish top 4, which is similar concept, just no Leyline. If we just quickly look at the Gruul version, this one's from Snug's profile. They went 54-21. And they're hovering into Mythic like 700. The deck's got reasonable looks against mono red, 54-21. So the deck here, similar concept. You have your Leyline. It's playing a split of 3 Emberheart, 1 Manifold Mouse. But you have protection effects and Snakeskin Veil. Paw Patch Recruit could be 2 bodies. It's also a trample creature. Giant Growth as another pump effect. So fewer Scamps kind of mixed into there. You have the mouse package in that regard. The big thing here, you got Thornspire Verge. I would probably play the 3rd Verge over the Restless Ridgeline. You don't want tap lines. Like, in all honesty, you can probably just 4 of and be content with that. And then just kind of fix the mana base in that regard. So Azorius Control was actually from like the last 10 days. I wanted to find a version just to kind of highlight. The recent ones weren't doing the best. They were like 52%. So this one here is at 63%. Big thing here is just a lot of the interaction here is just to deal with creatures on the stack. 3 damage and exile, get lost as removal, not on my watch as exile. You have Hornlock Whales, a tempo play to also bounce it. Sunfall is a sweeper. So a lot more cheap interaction as opposed to sweepers, which I think is correct. You can't be playing too much on the stack, and you're probably not going to get to turn 5 too often against the mono red deck, so you got to interact early. Counters in 3 steps ahead. Spellgyre card seems a little expensive for what it does, but it's just you're paying for the flexibility of a counter spell or card draw. Jace is one of your win conditions, mill effects, and then you have Farsight Ritual, the no name. We have Memory Deluge at home, but not really. So 4 mana, look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 2 in your hand. If you bargain, you look at the top 8. So you could bargain things like your Sunfall token, your Fountain Board token, stuff like that. Leveraging Tranquil Crow for some life gain. There's also the new Verge that you can play in this deck, Fountain Ports in here, as well as Restless Anchorage. So Mono Black discard was at 62.7%. I actually don't love this version into a field of mono red, just at least in this configuration, and I'll explain why. You have 1 cut down, you have 1 Bitter Triumph, 1 Go for the Throat. Yeah, Nowhere to Run's fine, but I think you need to play at least 1 to 2 more Go for the Throats in this deck to be reasonable. There's a lot of discard here, which is fine, but at a certain point, especially against mono red, they're going to be hellbent, and you're going to need to interact with their deck. So I would trim like some copies of like either Ruthless Negotiation, Cruel Claws Heist, just something to give you another effect of like just removal. I would say would be the easiest thing. Like relying Malicious Eclipse is fine, but again, it's turn 3 play. But otherwise, it's kind of built around Bandit's Talent to drain their hand. You also have the Unholy Annex to drain and gain, and then Ritual Chamber to make you a big demon, Shelly's, Aklazot's, Lily's kind of mixed in, Murex, and Fountain Port. I will say, finally, these decks are playing at the like correct amount of lands. These decks, for whatever reason, people love to put like 22 lands in a deck with like 5+ drops, which is always kind of silly. The other version of mono black, so 45-35, not a huge win percentage, 56% Shinansky, but they got into Mythic with it. They started at like 263, they kind of fell a little to 360. This one here seems to be like 6-5, 7-3 against mono red, so reasonable there. So this one here, you still have your cut downs, you have your Go for the Throats, Bat as some interaction, Shelly's Edict. So this one's just a little bit more interactive, I would say. I was looking for the slasher ones. They're all like low 50% right now. They could definitely win. It's slasher and the 4-drop Bloodletter that like one-shot kills them. You're just playing a little bit higher on curve. So you have to like overload on removal, but then you're kind of soft to like your other opponent's removal decks. Again, this is a deck that could probably benefit from 1 to 2 more lands, I would say. Just again, 22 lands when you're playing full 4 of Shelly, a Gixis Command, a bunch of 3-drops is a little light in that respect. Then go to Boros Auras. This is 62%. So this is the other kind of aggressive deck. Big thing with Boros is we don't have a Verge, so you have to play Thran Portal, which is like one of the worst lines I've ever encountered. But the core of this deck, so you have your Manifold Mouse, Emberheart Challengers, Heartfire Heroes, and then Optimistic Scavenger that puts counters on it when you get auras. So you have your like Monstrous Rage package, but then Ethereal Armor makes your creatures really big based on the number of enchantments. Shard Mage Rescue is a protection effect, which is really big. You have Sheltered by Ghost, which is removal, and Lifelink Ward. Demonic Ruckus for trample and evasion. Feather of Flight gives flying. It also draws a card when it comes in, and then Atali's Favor lets you cascade. With Manifold Mouse, basically builds your Embercleave package, which is very, very powerful when you can make a large creature. You then go to Azorius Oculus, 55%. So this is a deck that's been doing very well in best of 3. I think against best of 1, it's very aggressive, the format. I made this comment, I think, last week. I would say you probably want like 1 or 2 Elspeth Smite in here. Like you have your Into the Flood Maws and your Soul Partition is the only removal. I think you can just get away with playing a couple pieces more of early removal. Like trim a Phantom Interference maybe, trim like 1 Charta Course, play 2 Elspeth Smite, just a little bit more to deal with the interaction early. But core of the deck is you want to put into your graveyard Abhorrent Oculus or Haughty Jin, bring it back with Helping Hand or Recommission. And then you could just also have a lot of fuel to just hardcast this. And then you run away with these creatures here. Then we got a couple cool ones from the community. So we have, this is from Squig. They went 74-34, 8-4 against, like, from what we can tell, the Rakdos deck, beating up on like Golgari decks. So this is Abzan ramp domain-ish kind of deck. So not your like Atraxa pile. You still have your Overlords. So you have Overlord of the Hauntwoods, lets you ramp, helps you fix your mana for domain, for the Leyline binding, Overlord of the Mistmoors, high on the top end, Breach the Multiverse, Cease Desist, really good at destroying all artifacts, enchantments if needed. Otherwise, it's just, you know, the failsafe mode. It deals with the graveyard, and you gain 2 life and draw a card, which is nice. Then what you have is just a lot of cheap early interaction, Not on My Watch, Soul Partition, Sunfall as removal. So you really have like 12 1-2 mana exile effects, up the beanstalk for card advantage, triggers off all your Overlords as well, which is kind of nice. And then the last one, Gruul Delirium. So this is from Can of Chunkies. They went 31-12. They hunt the mono red matchup, but seem to be beating up on everything else. Like, you factor that in, they're 30-6 against every other deck in the format, which is pretty nice, like, ratio. Kind of lose one matchup, beat everything else. So this is a domain deck. You have things like Patchwork Beastie and then Clockwork Percussionist, 2 creature types. Beastie helps you mill. This is kind of akin to the Pioneer modern versions that people are trying out with like FOMO and stuff. You have Say Its Name that can get you back Altenac. Baldur's Strayed Worm comes back. Screaming Nemesis can turn off lifelink, makes blocking kind of difficult. Reasonable Body, somewhat draws you cards. The Snubhorn Burrow Fiend kind of self mills you as well, gets really big. Wildfire Wicker Folk, just a cool card. 3/2 that can come as a 4/3 trample with Delirium. Fear of Missing Out gives you extra combat turns. Breakout lets you cheat out some creatures. Violent Urge can give you a double strike, which is nice, especially with like a trample creature. Torch the Tower being the only interaction could be part of the reason why it's doing a little poorly against that deck. What you could do is like trim maybe like 1 Screaming Nemesis, like 1 Percussionist, play two more Shocks, just like another way to have some reach. So 6/1 drop interaction spells work against that deck. So that's it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing, what you've been enjoying. If you still feel mono red is overwhelming and something needs to be done about the Leyline, curious to hear what folks think, as I haven't been able to play that much this weekend given the COVID. Well, have a great one, stay safe, and we'll chat next time.